Well, welcome to yet another Monday Masterclass. We're glad to have you with us. A few more people still coming in. And today we're going to talk about innovation metrics. And, we've been using kind of the same basic innovation metric called the Vitality Index now for, I think it's like 1988, 3M came up with this. So here we are over 3 decades later. And now we want to say, well, is there something else we should be using, maybe in addition to the Vitality Index? So that's what we're going to cover today. As is always the case, we're going to keep this really informal. Just feel free to unmute whenever you want and pop in with a question. If you'd rather kind of compose your thoughts and really get them just right and type them, put them in the chat box, and Scott's going to be looking over that as well. And today's going to be a little different. Today, I'm going to be going into an actual presentation we prepared on this. One thing that Scott and I talked about when we first started putting these Monday Master Classes together is we decided we didn't want to just throw at you a bunch of stray presentations and papers and this and that. We want to have everything we talk about in one spot. Everything we talk about in workshops, when we do our coaching, when we do Monday Master Classes, e-learning. All of this content is in our friendly Blue Help section. So let me show you where you can come back and look at what I'm going to cover in more detail. Now, you can always use the search box to find things, and that's a pretty good way of doing it. But some of you like to know, well, where does this fit in the big scheme of things? So when you think about innovation metrics, it's really not one of the specific blueprinting steps, right? But it's really about blueprinting and what we do. So it makes sense to be underneath blueprinting methodology. And you'd be right if you guessed that. And so when you go down the blue, go ahead.
Sorry, I hate to interrupt, but I was trying to let people in the room and I accidentally closed the window. Are you able to
no
let
worries.
people in the room? I hit the wrong button.
Which window do you want me to stop sharing or what?
No, I don't know. Okay, wait, I see it now. Sorry about that. I got it now.
Okay.
I
people are
apologize.
entering.
I had hidden the window. I wasn't able to let them in, but I was able to figure it out. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Now, is everybody coming back in now then?
Yes.
Or yep. Everybody's still here. Okay, cool. No worries at all.
We're all good now. Sorry. Yep.
Oh, no problem at all. Yeah, so at any rate, we're looking for where would you find a Blue Help article on innovation metrics. And if I go over here on blueprinting methodology, and I can also look at over here in the middle here, you can see all these different topics. And then lo and behold, there's one right here on what innovation metrics should we use. Now you could type in metrics or innovation metrics, this will pop up. What I'm going to do is very, very quickly, I'm going to give you a quick tour of these 3 articles so you know where to find this in more detail. But then I'm going to show you a presentation and a white paper you can download, because this is one of those content pieces that we just wanted to get a little bit more detail on. So first of all, we're going to talk about the shortcoming of the Vitality Index. So when you go in this article here, Vitality Index is percent of sales from new product. And you'll see in here we talk about 3 areas where it's weak and what we'd like to see in this instead, and a little discussion on this, kind of brief. But notice there is an AIM article and a white paper. And I'm going to show you that white paper in a little bit as well, okay? So that's the first one. Now, if I scroll down on the left here again, what innovation metrics should we use? I will go into the second article, and that's the first new innovation metric we're going to describe, which is called the Growth Driver Index. I'll cover this in more detail, but once again, in your Blue Help section, you can get a real quick idea of what this is, and you can also download the white paper and the article. And then the last thing I'm going to cover under this topic of what innovation metrics should we use is the second innovation metric, which we call the Commercial Confidence Index. And this will be one especially near and dear to the heart of blueprinting users. So we'll describe this in more detail. And once again, there's the resources we talked about, as well as another white paper that touches on market satisfaction gaps. So I just wanted you to know where to find all this stuff. Now, if you want to download that white paper, you can come over here to the AIM Institute and come over to our insights. And now you know it's a white paper, so you click on white papers. And lo and behold, it is the fourth one down, new innovation metrics. So feel free to cover that. Now, what I'm going to do, which is a little different than normal Monday master classes, I'm going to go through a PowerPoint slide deck. It's going to follow exactly the same logic you saw in Blue Health, and it's going to follow the exact same categories that we have in the white paper. But I just think it's more interesting to look at it in a PowerPoint presentation. So let's go there now. Anybody have any questions first before we dive into this? I'll take a sip while you're thinking about any questions. Everybody good? Okay, now, I beg your pardon, but I'm going to go really quickly through these slides. Most people don't feel bad when people go quickly, but that means if I'm going too fast, just slow me down and we'll talk more. Yeah, somebody? Okay, here we go then. So new innovation metrics, we've been showing this at some different trade associations. That's why you saw that. So first, let's talk about the 3 shortcomings, 4 rules for better metrics, and then we're going to introduce you to 2 new innovation metrics today. So first of all, as we said, the Vitality Index was developed by 3M, I think in 1988. It's percent of sales from new products. Well, what's new? Well, most people use 3 years or 5 years when they say it's new, if it was launched in that last time period. Now, the problem is it's not predictive, tells you what's happened, not what's going to happen. It's not prescriptive, it doesn't say how to do better, and it's not precise. It can be easily manipulated. So let's examine each of those 3 in a little more detail. And by the way, I want to be really clear about this. I am not saying to scuttle your Vitality Index. I'm not saying to get rid of it. I'm saying supplement it. Okay, don't supplant it, supplement it. So first of all, why do I say it's not predictive? Well, when I say it's lagging, I mean it's really lagging. You know, it's like you turn up your thermostat and the furnace comes on next week. It's actually worse than that. You know, let's imagine you did something to improve the front end of innovation. You improved the way you were doing customer interviews. How long is it going to take for that project to get through, through the front end, develop your product, and have meaningful sales that it shows up in your large corporation, on your Vitality Index? We're talking years. So this is not a great way of doing it. If you change those practices, you're going to wait a long time before your metric says either that it worked or didn't work. Second of all, it's not prescriptive. Now, you have lots of ways of increasing your new product revenue. Spend more on R&D, spend more on marketing, train your staff in VOC. Now, let's get our stage gate process much more rigorous. Let's spend more on those product launches. Now, let's imagine you pull one of these levers and you're waiting on your Vitality Index to tell you if it worked. Well, good luck. It's going to be a long time before you'll know it. And you won't know which of these things even actually helped with this, right? Okay, so the dilemma we have on this is it's not going to tell us this. So it's a little bit like you're in a car for the first time. You've never done any driving at all. And you're guessing which of these pedals is going to make you go faster. And then you're going to wait a few years to see if you're right. It's a little bit what we're looking at if we rely on the Vitality Index for guidance on what to do better. Now, let's look at the last part. Have you ever heard this conversation at your company? Well, is it new if we change the color? Is that a new product? What if we just change the size? Was that new? Good questions, but here's the thing. It doesn't matter what we think of our new product. Do we think it was a new product? What really matters is what the customers think. And here's what I mean. If you tell me the new product did not bring any additional value to the marketplace, I don't think I'd bother calling it new. Now, if you tell me it brought some real meaningful value to the customer, I'm going to say, well, that's great. Do you have any evidence of it? Well, gosh, Dan, how do we get evidence that it brought value? Well, you get evidence that they pay you more for the thing, right? So what I'm going to recommend we do, and this is even outside those 2 new metrics we're going to talk about in a moment, I'm going to recommend you add a profit vitality index. Well, what's that? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Instead of percent of revenue from new products, it's the percent of gross profits from new products. Now, here's the deal. If you're truly innovating, your profit vitality index will be higher than your revenue vitality index. So if your normal revenue vitality index you've been measuring for years and years is at 20%, if your profit vitality index is higher than 20%, that means your new products are bringing more value to the marketplace, and customers are recognizing this value and paying you a premium because of it as a result of that. But if your profit vitality index is the same, then you're basically matching the value of old products. And if it's below your revenue index, well, you're spiraling downward. I don't know. I would love to hear this when we're done. If any of you want to tell me if your companies are measuring this, it's an easy thing to measure, and I'd recommend it. Okay, now that's still not the new vitality index we're recommending. That's kind of a variation on the theme of revenue. If we want to get a really good metric or two, what would be some rules we would follow? Well, here's the ones I would put in place. I'd want to make it leading. If I do more of this, we're going to have more growth. I'd want to make it actionable, something our employees can make happen. I'd want to make it benchmarkable. In fact, I don't want to just compare our performance in our business this year to last year. I actually would like to be able to compare our performance to other companies in our peer group. And then finally, I want it to be impactful, something that's really going to drive growth in our business. So those are the things that I'm going to be looking for in a new metric. So I'm going to introduce two new metrics now. One is called the Growth Driver Index. That's going to measure our growth capabilities. And the other is called the Commercial Confidence Index. And that's going to measure how well we're avoiding commercial failures and commercial risk because we understand customer needs. Okay, let me just take a breath for a second. Any questions on anything we've covered so far before we roll up our sleeves and dive deep into these two metrics? Everybody good so far? Okay, then let's take a look at the first one for growth capabilities. So imagine you decide you want to climb El Capitan, this 3,000-foot vertical granite monolith in the Yosemite Valley. Now, the problem is you don't have the right footwear, you have no climbing skills whatsoever, flabby muscles, So in other words, you have absolutely no capabilities whatsoever. But you know what? You really want results. So that everything should be fine, right? So Stephen Covey said we actually need both capabilities and results. In his landmark book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which old people like me remember, he talked about P and PC. P is production or results. PC is capabilities. Now, what I like to do is add another dynamic, that of time, and ask, where are we spending our time? My experience is, and you can tell me if it's different in your company, most companies and most leaders are spending their time worried about the results this year or maybe even this quarter. Now, it's helpful to be thinking about results or capabilities this year and results in the future, like long-term incentive plans. But here's where most companies need to spend a lot more time than they're spending now. Not exclusively, again, there needs to be a balance here. If you really want to drive growth, you need to think about capabilities for the long term. This should not surprise us. Can you think of any endeavor at all where the champions did not first build their capabilities and then win and become champions? Can you think of anything at all? Oh, wait, I've thought of one. Many business leaders think they can focus on results year after year, and every year at the end of the year, hit the reset button, climb back onto the hamster cage, and away we go again. And this makes for some really tired hamsters, by the way. My point is, I don't think a lot of businesses think enough about their capabilities. So what would we want to improve? Well, we've done some research on 24 growth drivers. Now, some of these will help us understand customer needs better. Some will help us meet customer needs better, and some will do both. We believe a company's mantra ought not to be maximize shareholder wealth. We think the company's mantra ought to be understand and meet customer needs better than others. You've probably heard me say that before. Understand and meet customer needs better than others. Maximizing shareholder wealth is a great result. It's a lousy goal. Goals should be inspirational and they should be actionable. And so this is. So that's our recommendation. Now you say, well, that's great, Dan. That's 24. Like, where in heaven's name do I start? Good question. If you'll download this white paper, what drives B2B organic growth, you'll see that you'll see what others have said they need to get better at. And you'll see this overwhelming desire to get better, not so much at meeting customer needs with better patenting and better stage gate processes, but really it's about understanding customer needs better is where most B2B professionals are at. And we've got like 10,000 years of response behind this research. Now, the second thing, though, that can be very helpful, and I'm getting to the metric pretty soon, if you're wondering if Dan forgot about that metric, is the B2B growth diagnostic. This is something that delivers that metric that I've been talking about, the growth driver index. Here's how it works. You go out to b2bgrowthdiagnostic.com. This is a totally free service. You can do it for every year if you want. When you're done with it, you'll receive a free report. And now, how do you do it? Well, you basically go out there and say, I just want to do it for my division, my group, my company. And great, we send you a survey link. You send the survey link to your fellow employees. They take the survey, and they self-rate your division or your group on these 24 drivers. And so what happens, let's say you get it back for your business. You know, they rated you down, your business pretty low on front-end work. And the blue line is the average, the gold is the top quartile, and the green is the top decile. So you get all these results, so you're benchmarked against others. What's the growth driver index? Very simple. We just take those 24 drivers and we average them together. Now, I think some are more important than others. In fact, we have data that actually supports that. But it's a simple average, and it gives you a really good idea. I mean, if you do this and you see you're at, 25 percentile, you're basically just trying to get out of the bottom quartile. You got a lot of work to do. But more important, it tells you where to do this work. In fact, my recommendation is hold this page 4. This is page 4 of the report you get. Look at that on one hand. Look at that research that I mentioned earlier that had 10,000 years of professional B2B experience, and then use this to develop a strategic map of how you're going to build your capabilities. Run it again every year to see how you're doing. So that is the growth driver index. And I think that's it for that one. Let me take another pause. Questions on the growth driver index before I go to the last metric? Everybody good on that one so far? And we can talk more at the end when we get to this as well. Okay, let's go to the last metric here. So the last one is measuring commercial confidence. So you guys are probably all experienced in blueprinting at some level, and you know that we've talked about problem 1 and problem 2 in the past. Problem 1 is what does the market want? Problem 2 is what's our solution? And as you know, on average, companies are spending 90% of their time on problem 2, only 10% on problem 1. Research shows if they get that problem 1 up to 20 or 30%, they'll be much more successful. Research also shows that most of the failures come from problem 1. There's a lot of history behind this. That goes back all the way to 1971, It was the first time inadequate market analysis was the overriding cause of failures. Nearly 5 decades later, we basically see about the same problem. And so we have a serious issue with commercial risk. That's what we're looking at here. And so my point is, you can avoid most of the commercial risk if you're in B2B. So we really ought not to have product development pipelines in the stage gate and beyond that have got much meaningful commercial risk at all. There's just no reason for that. I mean, we resolve our technical risk in the development stage. By the end of development stage, you wouldn't launch your product saying, hey, I hope this stuff works, let's launch it. You'd resolve your technical risk. Where do we resolve commercial risk? Well, as you know, most companies are out here. Hey, Joe, how's our new product doing? I don't know, Dan, we're going to launch it next month. We'll see if anybody buys it. We just don't know, right? And so what we want to do is build a certainty time machine and resolve that in the front end, because we can do it every bit as easily in the front end with B2B Why? Because our customers have high knowledge, interest, objectivity, and foresight. They can tell us exactly the outcomes they need. Improve my line speed, cut down on defects, make my product brighter, make it shinier. They may not tell the solutions, but they know the outcomes and they know the impact. So that's what we want to do, is understand their needs, their outcomes in the front end. Okay, so you know that, you know blueprinting is designed to do this. It's all about the outcomes in the front end. And it's the qualitative and divergent interviews, divergent and convergent interviews, qualitative and quantitative. And I think this presentation I gave was to people who weren't familiar with blueprinting. So I'm going to go over that. You guys already know it. And here's where we're going. We're going to get to this metric here pretty soon. It's all about the market satisfaction gap. And you know how that works. And you know what we're doing is we are eliminating errors of omission in discovery. That's failing to uncover an unarticulated need. And we're eliminating errors of commission in preference interviews, which is picking the wrong thing to work on. And those are the two primary errors you have in the front end of innovation. Okay. And our experience says when you do this, 5 out of 6 teams dramatically change their idea of what the product design should be versus if they had not done the interviews. So basically 5 out of 6 teams don't really know what their market wants until they do proper interviewing. Okay, and so now here's where the metric comes in. So our recommendation, if you really want to boost innovation at your company, is do not allow any significant product development work without firm, unfiltered evidence of customers' needs. And so the market satisfaction gap, or do something similar to it if you want. It doesn't have to be blueprinting, but let's make sure it's unbiased, unfiltered, quantitative, and let's get that commercial certainty in the front end. Now, I've noticed over the years, I can wave my arms and say this and people nod, but unless there's a metric in place to enforce this, we tend to fall back into bad habits. That's where the commercial confidence index comes in. It's a very simple metric designed to avoid squandering R&D due to unwarranted commercial risk. So let's say you have a project and you've done the market satisfaction gap, discovery, you did preference, put together a market case. You know what customers do and do not want, right? We'll call this a known need project. It's going to get rid of confirmation bias and internal filtering and confirmation bias and all that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to think about, known need projects. Now, here's how you run the index. It's pretty simple. You take all of your R&D projects that are market facing and you put them in one of 2 buckets. Now, one bucket is called the known need bucket. That's where you've done something like a market satisfaction gap. And the other one is called an assumed need project, okay? And you put your spending in there. And then the formula could not be much simpler. All you do is you take your total R&D spending on known need projects and divide it by your R&D spending on all of your projects. So let's think about this. You've got a group or a division. You're spending about $10 million every year on new product development, okay? Now, 4 of those projects are pretty big. Those 4 projects each sucked up $1 million of resources, in the course of a year. But the good news is you ran blueprinting all the way through to a market case. You got market satisfaction gaps on all 4 of those $1 million projects. So what's your CCI? Well, 4 times $1 million. So you have $4 million worth of R&D spending that you've got that's unknown need. 10 million was your total. You got a 40% CCI. And so that's really what the commercial confidence index does. It lets you know what percentage of your spending is on known need projects. Questions on that one at all? Okay, so that is it. That is what we've got. There's a white paper. If you want to go out there, new innovation metrics. Scott, we normally allow about a half an hour roughly for the topic, and then we swing over into anything people want to talk about. Sometimes they have something, sometimes they don't. Before we do that, I'm going to say, let's open up the lines if you've got any comments, but let me just share a couple things that we've seen very quickly. on these two metrics. And if you have any questions or observations to add, we'll do that. Otherwise, we'll see if there's anything else. So let me just share some experience on this. Why are we so hepped up about the growth driver index? Let me just share a quick story on this. So there was somebody very high up in one of our clients, this is a long time ago, said that, he had a conversation about innovation with a group leader. And the group leader said, this is a group vice president. The group vice president says, I don't really believe in innovation. And the person goes, what do you mean you don't believe in innovation? Well, I'm getting kind of close to retirement. By the time we do all this innovation stuff and it has a meaningful impact, I'm going to be out of here, So I'm not going to worry about innovation. The person was flabbergasted. Well, what do you mean? How can you say this? And my reaction was, well, that's terrible. But at least the person was honest, right? They were using their outside voice. How many people do you know who on their inside voice say, you know what, this innovation isn't going to help me. I'm in it for the short term. And what do they effectively do? They raid their organization. The company rewards them financially for degrading the capability to grow in the future of the whole company. It's a bizarre situation. And you might say, well, maybe they get away with it because nobody knows they're doing it. And I would agree with you. So let's make sure people know. Have you ever had a 360 evaluation done? That's where everybody evaluates the person so they can't just, manage up and, destroy the people underneath them. This is like a 360, the growth driver index. When you're getting your people to say, are we getting better or are we getting worse on capabilities? Now, when you put that in place, here's what happens. The board of directors, the CEO says, I want to see if each of my group leaders is in fact building the capabilities for the future or they're eating their seed corn. And so the growth driver index is a really, really good tool to make sure this isn't happening. I tell business leaders, your number one mandate is to leave your business stronger than you found it. Well, yeah, but what about boosting stock price? I don't care about that. That's great if you can do it and build your business stronger. But if you do other things and you are weakening your business, nothing else really counts. So let me stop on that one. Any questions or observations on the growth driver index? Okay, let me jump over to the CCI, Commercial Confidence Index. What's the reaction on that? Well, if you decide to institute it, and by the way, the growth driver index takes you about an hour to put in place. You basically set it up and you send out the survey and you're basically done. The commercial confidence index, you do have to do a little bit more work because you got to be able to measure this stuff. So don't be surprised if you put the CCI in place and the initial reaction from maybe the R&D leaders is, but Dan, we don't know what our percent of spending is on R&D on known need projects. Your reaction could be, so let me see if I understand this right then. You're saying that we're spending millions of dollars on R&D and we're not sure if we understand customer needs? Okay, I'll go figure out what the CCI is. Okay, so they go out, they work on the CCI, and they come back. And the next conversation goes like this. Well, Dan, we calculated our CCI and we don't have hard, quantitative, unbiased, unfiltered data on any of our spending. So our CCI is 0%. And you say, well, that's fine. But what I want to know is what's your goal for next year and what's your goal for the year after. So don't get worked up if it's not there today, but let's put in place some accountability, something we can measure for the future. All right, so that's all I have to say on these new innovation metrics, growth driver index and the commercial confidence index. And a little bit, we're going to open up for anything that you all have. But before we do that, I'm going to be quiet for a few seconds. Any questions at all? Everybody good with that? You'll probably go back to your leaders and introduce these, and they'll say, sure, we'll start doing it right away, correct? Well, it's a different way of thinking, but listen, if you do get interested in this and your management is interested and we can help, we know it's different, but you know what? Call on Scott and I. We're always happy to meet with your management and try to convince them of a different way of doing things. So, okay, so that's it for me on these new innovation metrics. Any other topics that you might want to talk about? We try to keep the last half hour open. And Scott, did we get anything in the chat from people yet?
No, everybody's just been listening intently.
All right.
Well, hello.
Please.
Yeah, this is Bob. Just on the
Yes,
innovation, on the innovation metrics, just to test my understanding of it, you would expect if your CCI was high, that your GDI would, or if your CCI was increasing or going up, you would expect your GDI to go up as well, right?
Very good. I would indeed, because a very keen insight on your part, Bob. For the CCI to go up, you really have to get people, trained to some extent. I mean, you guys know it's not like a huge thing to learn how to do qualitative and quantitative interviews, but the reason a lot of companies don't do it is twofold. One, they don't have the skills to do it. They don't have the capability to do it. And the second, they don't have the discipline to do it. So if you build the capability to do it, you automatically will see several elements. Remember the 24 growth drivers? There are several in there on things like qualitative interviews and on quantitative interviews, and a few other things also that are going to impact that. So you're right. The GDI will build the capabilities, so that'll come up, and your CCI will come up, and they'll both be leading indicators. One will be a leading indicator that you're getting capabilities that will help you get past competition and do better in the future and bring real value to the market. The other one, the CCI, is saying we're going to be guessing less at what customers want and knowing more what customers want when we go into the lab. Good linkage there, Bob. Thank you. Other questions or observations?
Yeah, I had the one in chat, Scott. So we say we survey people. Who should get a survey when you're doing your GDI? What's the scope there? Who is appropriate to send that survey out to?
Wonderful question. So what we like to do is get all your employees. First of all, two parts to that answer. If you're in a large corporation, I would do the survey not for the whole corporation, but for your group or your division. Here's why. If you get one GDI for the whole company, you could have a group leader or division general manager go, well, yeah, we look really bad, but I know our group is fine or our division is fine. So break it down into divisions or groups, okay? Now, within that division or group, get the people who somehow touch your market-facing innovation. So here are the 4 or 5 I would recommend. I would definitely recommend your technical people. So send the survey to your employees in the R&D area, anybody who's doing any kind of market-facing innovation. Send it to your marketing people / business development / product management. Send it to your salespeople. They're engaged in this process. You might want to also send it to your operations people because they have to be able to scale up and so forth. And then definitely send it to your management. Now, when they take this survey, there's very few qualifying questions. I think there's only one, and that is, what is your job function? And we've got those 5 buckets in there. So when you get your results back, not only will you get these GDIs, top quartile, and all this stuff, all those things, but you'll also see if your technical and marketing and sales people were agreeing with each other or not. So we'll show you some data on that. If they're not agreeing with each other on what reality is, that raises other questions. Great question, Don. Did that help?
Yes, thank you.
Great. And we'll counsel you. If you want to do the GDI, we can let you guys know. We'll talk a little bit about it. It's pretty simple, but we can definitely kind of get you set up on that as well. Other questions or observations? All right. Well, listen, as you think about this topic more, if you want to go in more detail on it, just let us know, and we'll be glad to do it. As you can tell, we're kind of interested in this. We think it will help companies. Now, any other broad questions? Maybe you're out interviewing and you had a certain customer reaction, or you have some questions on the software. Really, anything's fair game, right? And you know how we do this. I'm going to take the easy questions, and Scott's going to get the tough ones, right?
Sure.
On a Monday morning. Great. Now, if there's no questions, we'll call it off and say we had a great start on a Monday. Last call, anything that anybody wants to talk about?
Yeah, I have this is Bob Springhorn again. I have a question related to just the support tools that we have access to on your website. I took the blueprinting course in June. It was a 2-day course, I think.
Yeah.
And now, it's but 6-7 months later, and we're really, starting to dig into into a blueprinting plan for a specific product. So I know there was some tools I had access to for 30 days. What do I still have access to on your website that'll help refresh my memory and guide us through the planning process?
Great question. Scott, here's where I am going to ask you a question. I know after the 30 days, the software and the e-learning go away. Does Bob still have access to the Blueprinting Center itself after 30 days? Do you remember?
He should. Bob, have you tried? Yeah, he should have access to Blueprinting Center, Blue Tools, and Blue Help.
Okay, so Bob, what you can do, you can still come out to www.blueprintingcenter.com, and you'll be able to get into the Blue Tools. This would be helpful if you're maybe trying to explain to some colleagues how this all works. There's a whole bunch of tools here. Also, you'll be able to get at the Blue Help. You'll have this for the rest of your career, whether you sign up for software or not. This is a free thing once you come. And you can look at all these different Blue Help things in here. And then when you're ready to go forward, what you'll want to do is probably get your teammates and yourself subscribed. So for that, if you come over here to our main website, let me go click. So here's the aiminstitute.com, okay? theaiminstitute.com. So when you're thinking about, okay, I want to get started on training, come over here to training, and you want to pick blueprinting training, obviously, not product launch or something. But check out this training plans and pricing, okay? You click on that, and then when there's like 9 things you get when you fully subscribe. You're kind of partially signed up here. But when you fully subscribe, you get software and e-learning and Blue Tools, and there's all kinds of stuff here, okay? Then what you want to do is look down here, and if you have a single project, we would recommend this team plan right here, okay? And so let's say you want to have a real team go forward, maybe there's 4 people on it. You want to get them the full subscription, that's what it is, $13.90 per person. After the first year, it's only like $30 a month if you want to keep it going, okay? And then we highly recommend you get some coaching the very first time. So what you do is you click calculate cost. Say I got 4 people, and I have 1 team that's a coach. And so that would be the way to get your first team through with maximum coaching and support. After you've had your people trained, you don't need the coach anymore. And then it's basically, $30 a month to keep this thing going for future projects. So that would be our advice, is to come over to the team plan when you're ready to go. And if you had like a whole division of people and 30 people, you would use a business plan. But that's the easiest way to get started with a real project. By the way, when you do this in-team coaching that I just mentioned there, this is where Scott or me or one of 7 or 8 other coaches joins your team and helps you go faster, higher quality, and really works the skills. And, Scott and I were kind of enthusiastic about this, but now that we've actually been doing it for much of 2020, we're reticent to tell people to do a project the first time without this, because we're finding so many ways at these different web conferences as we join your team to help you. If we could do this without doing this, we would. This isn't like a money-making thing. We have to pay our coaches and everything ourselves. But what we're finding is the quality goes up so much when you have an AIM coach the first time. So maybe more than you want to know, but does that help, Bob?
Yes, thank you.
You bet. Other questions or observations we can help with?
Hi, this is Sandra.
Everybody good? Oh, yes, please.
I have a question where I need some advice here. So we were going to go with a customer to do a interview, and our sales
Yes.
team was very enthusiastic about it. But then the customer said, so we shared the agenda that you had on the website and all of that.
Oh, good.
And then the customer
Good.
said that to the salesperson, why do I need to do all this? I can just sit with you, come to my office, and we'll sit down with you and actually tell you what we want to, how we want to work with you and what we want to do. So
Yeah.
how do we handle a situation, and what do we actually tell the customer that how he would be benefited by talking to the larger team instead of just to the salesperson?
Yeah, great point. Oh, I see. They were saying just have the salesperson come by themselves. I'm with you now. Yeah. Okay, so there's a couple things here. So the first thing is you could say, well, it would be very helpful if we could have one of our experts come and listen and hear things firsthand. You know, we love our salespeople, but you know how it is. Whenever valuable information gets transmitted from one person to another, there's always some loss of the signal, right? You don't get everything. And our salespeople can't ask some of the questions that our technical person or our marketing person could ask. So this gives us a chance not just to hear one way what you want, but the people who will really be innovating on your behalf will be there to really make sure we understand it. So that's the first thing I would tell you, or I would have you tell them, is you don't want to lose this information, okay? In fact, I would even say we would recommend you have your team of people who have an interest in this, and they meet with our team of people. So that's the first thing, is getting the right people plugged in. But the second thing I would tell them is, I would say this is much more than a normal, simple exchange with a salesperson or any one person, because we're going to do two things, not all at the same time, but we're going to diverge and we're going to converge. And here's what we mean by that. Our process is designed to diverge and make sure we hear everything that you need. Because if we just sit down and you just rattle off what you're thinking of right then, there's a very good chance we won't hear everything. And we got some special methods and tools to help you think in a divergent fashion. So at the end of this, you're going to feel very comfortable. You really have told us everything all at once that we need to hear. That's the first step. After we diverge, we're going to come back later and we're going to do something called converging in a quantitative preference interview. And at that time, we're going to guide you through a process, which I think you're really going to enjoy, that it's going to help you lay down some really strong priorities. So if we have trade-offs, we know which to work on. And we're going to recommend you have your main decision makers and influencers at that. So this process is more than what you might normally expect, but our experience has been customers really love it and feel very listened to. So please, would you let us do it? That's what I would probably say, Sangamitra. 2 points: getting the right people plugged in and use a very thoughtful, divergent, convergent process. Does that help? And you may be on mute. So if you're saying, no, it doesn't help at all, Dan, you're on mute. And that's
I'm
okay.
Sorry. No, I said, thank you so much. We'll try to the salesperson. I don't have direct contact, but the salesperson, I can coach him to go and answer back this way.
It sounds like the salesperson was very enthusiastic, which is great. If some of you on the call say, well, that's not the problem is the salesperson is blocking this, go out to the Blue Tools section, and then click on Blueprinting for Sales and send this link to your salespeople. Because to be very frank with you, many times it's our own salespeople who are a little bit nervous about people from the office coming and talking to their customers. So that's another piece of advice. It doesn't sound like that's your situation, Sangamitra, but it's there for anybody who faces that.
Yeah.
Great question. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Dan, we do have a question in chat. Will there be an online calculator for the GDI? Well,
that's interesting. So we actually, an online calculator for the GDI. So we actually do that calculation for you. So what happens is when you go out to, let's go out here a second. That's a great question. When you go out to this website, under growth tools, these are all the free things we have. And here is the growth diagnostic right here, okay? That's where you're gonna go if you wanna do this thing, okay? And this is on page 4, what you get. That's in the result you get. And so what you'll do is there's a start your thing going here. Your employees will take this, and then what we will do behind the scenes, let's say you tell us here, I'm gonna show you what this looks like. You're gonna click on this, and there's very little work involved in this. What you'll do is you'll tell us the name of your business, roughly how many people, and let's say you want to do it between February 1st and February 15th, okay? And you put your name and email, and you just send it back to us, okay? Now, what we'll do is we'll send the survey link to you, okay? And then you'll send it out to your people, and we even give you something you can put in your email to make it really easy, and you'll put that survey link in there, okay? Now you send it to your people and you just sit back. So you've got what, maybe a half hour of your time invested in this thing so far. Now the calculations are done by us, okay? What we do is we go through this and we get all the results, and there's a little bit of manual work. It's not all automatic, but a lot of it's automated. And we prepare a 20-page report with this on page 4 and send it back to you. And it'll have up on the top of this thing, let me go back here a second. It'll have on the top of this your GDI, that 46%. Now that will be against our benchmark database of over 5,000 responses. That's basically where your company is at. So you don't have to do any work, you just get the report back. And I didn't mention this, but when you get that report back, it's gonna actually have advice on all 24 of these on how to improve your standing. Did I answer the question? I'm not sure I did. Let me pause and see if there's anything more on that. Is that okay? Whoever asked that question?
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Good. Other questions
Dan,
or observations? Yeah, go ahead.
We have another in chat. How do you ensure confidentiality of GDI results?
Aha. Well, we do. We make sure they're confidential. So if you if you get this started, you're the person who gets it started, and you say, "Man, somebody gave us terrible results. Who the heck was it?" We will tell you, "I'm sorry about that. It's part of the deal." If you don't promise people confidentiality, you can't trust that they're going to answer correctly. So that's on when they go to the website, we do tell them it's going to be confidential, and we do honor that. And we don't do anything with it except we blend in, all the results of yours with all the results of everybody else, and we don't really care what yours specifically anyway. But yeah, we keep it all confidential. Good question. That's a good point. Good. Other questions? All right. Well, let us know if you want to run either of those. The GDI, as I say, probably takes about an hour per year. That's a real easy one. The CCI, if you're not collecting this data already, it's a little more work. But let us know. We'd be glad to work with you individually if you've got some private, questions and interest in this thing. Well, Scott, that was a great group. A lot of good questions. If there's nothing else, I think I'll pause for 10 more seconds, see if there's anything else. Scott, somebody told me when you're doing probing, you should wait for responses. Did you hear that somewhere?
I've heard that somewhere.
Yeah, it's hard to do. Okay. Hey, listen, thanks everybody for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time out. Give us a holler if we can help in any way. Have wonderful Mondays, and we'll be staying in touch. Thanks, everybody.